Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. Coming up on this episode, we are discussing which order we going to do? Michael Mann and Meg Gardiner's. We're going to put both authors in this. Michael Mann and Meg Gardiner's book, Heat 2. And along with me today is Ted Aycraft.
Yeah, but are we going to talk about Heat as much as we do the book, the movie?
That's what's going to happen, inevitably. This book came out a year ago, but I guess it's out in paperback now. But
yeah, to be honest with the audience, Shane's been wanting to do this one forever because Shane picked the book up right away and zoomed right through it.
We will talk about this here.
And it was like pulling teeth out of me to finish the book. And it had nothing to do with not wanting to read it or not that I was looking forward to it, and I was very excited about it. But just the whole idea of I'm a nonfiction reader, and it's been forever since I've read.
You're a nonfiction book about film reader.
Yeah, but especially that, or Bob Dylan books.
Pop culture. Let's broaden it. Pop culture.
But I thought, oh my gosh, prose. And
we'll get to this in a second. But first off, what'd you watch this week, Ted? Anything cool?
I get to go back to see The Sting on the big screen.
Showplace Cinemas locally opened in 1973, so they're doing their 50th anniversary. They're having throwback pricing and showing movies from 1973.
And that's the very first film they showed.
It is a very...
I think the owners said that was the first film they showed was The Sting. And it's such an interesting film. It's such... you cannot deny the enjoyability.
I watched it.
The joy of that film. But it is like on the nose film.
You know what? I rewatched it about 2 months ago, and I remember because I was thinking of putting it in the category. I don't know, maybe it was a while back because I was thinking about it in our Die Hard conversation. But I was thinking about it in terms of the perfect script. But I don't know if in terms of like a script that's like clock. When you say perfect, you mean clockwork, where everything pays off and it's got the audience feeding out of the palm of its hand.
Just across the board, you sit there and the credits. I think Shane.
I don't even like the last turn too that much.
I think you're like me, possibly. You're probably maybe better at it than I am. You know some producers' names, some editors' names, costume designers, set designers, but you don't know all of them. They don't all come to the top. Obviously, actors and directors get the memory game. You play the memory game on them really well. But man, when I watched the credits, The Sting, I'm like, oh gosh, Robert Surtees, Michael and Julia Phillips. Zanuck and Brown, everybody, going all these names going by. I know all these people. So it's like Edith Head doing the costumes. It's like, wow, this is cream of the crop, all in line.
The other day you got mentioned as your own personal IMDb, so I guess this is just your self validation of your own personal IMDb.
Well, I mean, especially with certain names, like I said, I don't know all. I don't recall editors all as well, but this, I think.
Oh, of course, it's the editors.
Yeah. Well. Or cinematographers or whatever, but this one I like. Oh, I know, yeah, and you could tell it's kind of on a set. It's kind of like a Hollywood throwback set on a studio set.
Sure,
look.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though they kind of got it's a '70s, got some little dirt put in there, little filth in there, a little bit, but and then you got the Marvin Hamlish doing Scott Joplin ragtime music, and it's just, boy, you just can't, I can't. I would be hard pressed to find somebody that didn't like the film.
Well, the thing that hit me when I last watched it was that maybe the cream of the crop rises on this, but Redford, we've talked about sometimes with a movie star, it's not necessarily their performances or the movies that sometimes, especially with Tom Cruise, it's their taste.
Right.
They pick good movies.
Yes.
Redford has consistently been good about picking good scripts, I thought. I don't know if it's the best of his stuff, but there's so many of his scripts that he's worked with that are either really high up on the most beloved scripts of all time, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, or even something like Spy Game. I remember being so clever and so.
Or even 3 Days of Condor. They just did a 4K of that.
All the President's Men worked with Goldman as much as he does.
Yeah, Glenn Erickson did an interesting review where it has none of the dirt. It does, but I mean, Parallax View and all the conspiracy movies that came out around that same time. The other ones are so much darker and gloomier and have more gravitas. This one actually is much more entertaining. It is,
Well, didn't even at the time it had the reputation of like movies are starting to get a little glum. This is a happy movie or a movie that would make it fun to come to the theater.
But it is glum. I mean, it is dealing with the post Watergate fallout, definitely.
Fair enough.
But it's got a little bit more. It's got the Hitchcockian feel to it because he gets, he hides out with Faye Dunaway, and all of a sudden.
Oh, sorry, I was still on The Sting, not the 3 Days of the Condor. Sorry,
but I'm talking about 3 Days Condor.
Yeah.
So I was, but anyway, yeah. But
I mean, that's
yeah, the Sting was back.
That's Sidney Pollack polish there too.
But the Sting is definitely what you said. It's another good throwback that everybody has a good feeling walking out on.
Yeah. Last night I watched. Was it last night? Have you ever seen Petrified Forest?
Oh my gosh! If I have, it's been so long ago. It's the one that kind of put a Bogart
play. Yeah,
Betty Davis is in it.
I don't know.
And what's his name? Go with the wind guy. Leslie Howard.
It's Leslie Howard. Thank you, Leslie Howard. Because last episode we were talking about Inglourious Bastards in lieu of To Be or Not to Be, and really hit me. Michael Fassbender in Inglourious Bastards is completely impersonating Leslie Howard. At least,
what do you think?
At least in Petrified Forest. Petrified Forest has. I want to throw this out at you. There's sometimes when I watch a movie that's pretty old that isn't classic or beloved or like remembered as much, but has some fans.
Yeah.
Where I am really forgiving for it as a time capsule.
Okay, is that one of them? Because
yes,
yeah, but it does stick out. It's kind of.
Oh no, it totally stuck. Well, yeah. just from the performances alone, it stuck out. And the ending, some of the stuff with Bogart at the end was great. Leslie Howard's the writing on it. I don't want to spoil if you're going to see it, but like Leslie Howard at the end, like there's a certain level of fatalism he has.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the time that was a very well-renowned play.
That doesn't surprise me, but again,
because it taste change, and what was kind of high at one time is now kind of.
Well, it's not even taste. I'm saying just the ongoing
tropes.
I'm not saying storytelling automatically always gets better, but it is a ongoing.
It's a little arched. It's a little stiff, right?
Kinda.
Yeah.
It's not. Stiff's rough.
Maybe the directing. The direction.
I can't even remember the director's name.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Because it starts out on a really interesting set, and I think there's even one of the first usage, or I don't know if it's the first, but it was one of the first ones I've ever seen, earliest back of a heat lamp. Where you put a heat lamp in front of a lens to get the mirage wave.
Yeah.
And then it goes straight into a studio set after that point. But my point is the endeavor of storytelling, the collective human endeavor of storytelling is an ongoing process of sophistication where it gets better and better, I think, or at least people learn from each other and try to get better and tell.
And the ones that do
truer stories.
You go back and you do watch and go, oh, it's a little stiff or this, that, blah, blah, blah. But then there's all of a sudden there's a Howard Hawks film or there's a Hitchcock film, and you go, oh well, this is why it's got its reputation, because it's forward, it's much more progressive in its writing and style that it holds up.
I think that's the definition of what a classic is. I mean, like and I'm not saying that's a movie that like still speaks to people years after.
Yeah, I think Petrified Forest is more in terms of.
I wouldn't call it a classic.
Well, I think probably the reason it's important is because of the evolution of the stars in it. It's a pivotal part
maybe
in their evolution.
I think I'd heard the reason I wanted to watch. I think Guillermo del Toro mentioned it offhandedly, and he's got a great list of film noir recommendations.
But when I started becoming kind of what do you want to call a cinephile or whatever you want to call
you did seek it out.
I remember thinking that popped up a lot just because of the Betty Davis Bogart parts and how that was important to their careers.
Okay. Onto the book. All right, I want to give you a form right here. You have seemed mystified as for why I wanted to do this in the first place.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, because of all the things we could do, we could talk about, and things that we like, and things that we're more expertise on, and some that we don't even hardly to do any homework on at all. Why
homework? That's the issue.
Well, but yeah, I just and I think I know what your answer is going to be, but your answer is because of the movie Heat.
I'm almost equally mystified. It's like, why are you not into this? Like, look, I know you've probably had way more experience with earlier versions of, we just did the episode Convergence Culture on transmedia and different versions of a movie and expanding the universe of a movie. And what always happens is those get diluted. They, like, the original creator had one story they want to tell, it becomes popular, and then they hire out people to come up with glorified fan service to rewrite, to expand the universe. And I mean, yes, there have been times in the past where I remember the Timothy Zahn Star Wars books when they first came out. I was like really excited to read those. But for example, I'm just as used to it being trash. That's fine. Okay, Ted,
No, no, no. But I mean, I've had it's interesting because you're correct about that. Uh, the dilution, but I think over the decades of being a fanboy, uh, I've gone up and down about this.
Okay.
Like I was just as a kid in 68, 69, 70, I thought the Good Bad the Man with No Name trilogy was just the greatest thing in the world, and they came out with a spin-off paperback series. And I ate them up. I read them. I bought them right away.
There is a very good source of childlike enthusiasm that gets its advantage taken over by people trying to, like,
Right.
dilute this down.
And then I go back and I look how cheaply written those books are, and there was really no reason for them. But and then I being a comic book fanatic over the years, we always looked down upon movie adaptations. They were like there was almost just the Marvel would do it just out of some extra bucks. They were not they were not invested, and so we were always thought, well, we knew they were knockoffs.
Let's make it clear. This is not a movie adaptation. Two, let's also
Sure.
take this out of the repertoire. The thing about Heat and Michael Mann's filmmaking that we all love is this shit is adult. This is not child.
Yes.
I mean, maybe at the beginning of the day, I heard her describe that Michael Mann's MO is a very child. I think he's even said it, a very childlike premise expanded out as an adult. So it's cops and robbers, or he saw Last of Mohicans really young and he wanted to remake it for years, but obviously becomes more poetic and adult and expanded. Michael Mann is, when you think of Heat, you think of a movie that is expansive, novelistic. You think of Michael Mann has, at his heights, his storytelling powers, is not just a great filmmaker. He's a great writer, and he's a great writer with a lot of detail underneath the surface and a lot of life lived by his characters. That when he's at his best, I would say. So him expanding this universe, especially the Heat universe. This isn't him making, Black Cat 2.
Yeah. Well, no, I get it. I get it. I get it. I've always had, I started out, you've heard this old nugget of mine over and over again where I was actually let down when I first initially saw Heat.
We talked about this before, and I think I may even talk about this on other episodes. I was working for a director at the time. I won't name names, but I had, at the end of my working with them, we had lunch with them, and I was still working at the theater in Austin that had a digital cinema where you could hook up I think it was HD DVD. It wasn't even Blu-ray at the time, but you could hook it up to the first DCP. So I watched a long series of movies on the big screen that no one else had access to. And I just remember on my birthday watching Heat, and just how one of my favorite shots in all the cinema is going in the overexposure going into the tunnel, and just how overwhelming it was seeing that. And the director was just like, had your story. They saw it when it came out, and they were a little disappointed. I think Roger Ebert in his review we'll go into this later, but he complained about the flip side of the coin, that cops and robbers are on the same.
Yeah, I mean, you got to dial back and go when Thief came out. It was just like, oh, here's a new voice, here's a new look, and a new just amazing director debut, and to see that, I didn't mind The Keep. I know
We have an episode on The Keep.
yeah, yeah, but you ought to listen to that, and we rhapsodize on that back then. And then Manhunter comes along, and I'm even better. I'm like, oh my gosh! And the visuals in Manhunter were just amazing. And he's doing that in the midst of Miami Vice, and then all of a sudden here comes Last of Mohicans, and that to me is a perfect film. I don't know, you can't get any better than Last of Mohicans in my book. and I saw it multiple times in the theater. So Here Comes Heat now is announced. De Niro, Pacino together. It's cops and robbers. It's a modern day crime film. I'm like, oh, this is just going to just blow the hair off my head when I see this thing.
Didn't you see it twice on like the first day?
Twice. Early morning screening with maybe the Evansville Critic and some maybe employees, and then I turned right around again and saw like the first showing in the day, paid showing of the day with my two buddies, and I'm like I'm already working like why am I? This is like, and then of course the side note of that is one of the friends, Todd Fox, is sitting there, and Todd goes, well, this is LA Takedown.
We're definitely going to talk about LA Takedown here in a second.
I go, what? What do you mean LA Takedown? He goes, yeah, that tape you gave me. It was my own tape. I hadn't watched it yet. I had taped it off of television, Michael Mann TV movie, and Todd. So that was kind of ruined for Todd because like, why is he remaking a movie this soon, doing a turnaround on something? So I was like just mixed with things, but now I love the film, and I almost just want to keep on watching it again now.
Well, Heat's power isn't in rewatching it.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, I think my first viewing of it wasn't theatrical. It was a video. I was proud. I think the statute of limitations. I can mention this. I used to rent movies from Blockbuster, and I was proud because you put the two VCRs together to bootleg them for yourself so you can rewatch it. And it was a two tape VHS, and I remember I stitched it together perfectly into one EP. And I was so proud of myself for that. But really downgraded pan scan. But let's talk about the book a little, okay? All right. Sure. The big appeal, for starters, let's talk about the concept of spoilers, what we're going to spoil about this. I think anyone who's listening to this wants to hear about Heat 2. There's a few different camps. There's the people who read it. There's the people who haven't read it and are okay with us spoiling it. Those are the people who should be talking to. There's a big, strong possibility this might be made into a movie. If you're not going to read the book and are kind of holding out for the movie and don't want to be spoiled on the movie, okay, you don't have to listen to this episode because we are going to spoil the book.
Fair enough.
All right. The thing that's great about this book, I think we talked about this with ourselves about Black Hat as being like a little bit of a Rosetta Stone for Michael Mann's work. This is like 5 modern Michael Mann movies in one. There's so much content in this, and it feels like the jumping back and forth between Chicago and LA with a little bit of Mexico, but mainly Chicago and LA. This is a really Rosetta Stone for Michael Mann.
Right. Oh yeah. Obviously, because you got the Chicago, and this is what made me come up with this a little really. I'm going to say something very weird here, and you're going to roll your eyes. But you got the Chicago Michael Mann. And you got the L.A. Michael Mann, and then you got this whole weird, strange South America, modern, almost dream-like, modern age, working with technology ahead of its time, and blah blah blah. Michael Mann.
There's a quote later in the book: "In transnational organized crime."
Right.
That's the Michael Mann we're talking about. But that's the Black Hat.
Yeah, the Black Hat of the book. So I was thinking, this thing's been floating around my brain. I'm thinking, it's interesting. Thief. It's one man song, and there's a lot of the character James Caan plays is translated into the Niro character in Heat.
Sure.
And so you got this is Thief, Heat, and Heat 2 are kind of a trilogy in their own way, in a way that Fistful of Dollars, $40 More, and The Good, Bad, the Ugly are.
Heat, Thief, and which one?
The book, the Heat 2.
The big observation I have a feeling about Heat 2 is that this is like if Heat had aspirations to be Godfather, this is clearly the Godfather 2.
Yeah, I know this. Like I said, this is really strange, but I just because Leone and both Mann and Leone are some of my cinema gods, and so I think about them a lot.
Listeners of the podcast are surprised by that. They've never heard you say that before.
Even though I've kind of bumped Mann out for another guy, but we won't go into that.
We don't need to go into that.
No. Fistful of Dollars deals with one character mainly, Clint Eastwood, and Thief is basically James Caan. $50 More, you got Van Cleef added into the mix, the older bounty hunter, young bounty hunter, and the Heat is the cop and the criminal, and how they bounce against each other.
One might say that everyone's expectations of what Hannibal was going to be. Everyone thought
Brian Cox and William Peterson.
William Peterson's character. Will Graham was going to go with Clary Starling. That's what they thought the third Hannibal Lecter's
That
book
would
was
have been
going
cool.
to do,
Yeah.
but it didn't do. Anyway.
And then he gives now he writes the book Heat 2. That's the good, bad, and the ugly. It's got multiple characters, multiple things going on, and everybody loves and thinks of Good, Bad, and the Ugly as a masterpiece. So if Heat 2 can translate to a great film, this could be one of his masterpieces.
I just have trouble with that just because
I know it's silly.
well, no, because the second one, The Godfather, or the Godfather to Heat, is just like, these are like, it doesn't have a straight line, even if it's about two characters or even a two-handed line. Like, it is so expansive.
I'm just more. It's more of a in terms of Michael Mann's playground. Because Sergio says the character Clint Eastwood technically is not the same guy in all three films. They're all three. They just have this similarity to them, and I think Thief. You go from Thief to Heat 2. You kind of got this building blocks, just like the Man with No Name trilogy has.
Well, I'm harping on the Godfather 2 thing because it's also great. It's like it's goes back and forth in time, but you also have one of the main characters be a character who died in the first movie. Spoiler for Heat.
So you're saying if Heat 2 does get made and it gets close and it's made close to the book, it's going to be what Godfather 2 is. The Godfather Heat 2 will be the Heat.
I don't that's a quality assessment of I'm saying the story structure and the attempt is the structure of it feels the same.
Of course, Quentin, doesn't want to be an old man director, and Michael Mann, how old is he now? He's up there. He's
80, I think.
80 years old. And somewhat maybe Black Hat was one of his old man films because it didn't do that well. I like Black Hat.
Yeah, I was gonna say Black Hat is not.
You and I talked about this, and the first thing I said to you is it's like watching the best hits of Michael Mann.
Yeah, it's funny because like when a director goes a long time without making a movie, I did this with Avatar: Way of the Water. You almost, when they do certain stuff, you're like, is it a greatest hits? When just they haven't made a movie in a while.
Yeah.
All right. Back again to the book.
Sorry.
The book is dedicated to Michael Mann's father, Jack Aaron Mann, and the thing is to who inspired anything. One of the interviews, I think it's Hollywood Reporter around Ferrari that came out, describes a story I'd never heard. Michael Mann, as a child with his brother, tried to burn down a chain grocery store that was crushing his father's small shop. You heard this? Yeah. I think the Heat universe expands. Michael Mann says this in the Heat commentary, and it's in the first few pages of Heat 2. It's also in the first few pages of the Heat screenplay. I think it's in there, or maybe it's at the very end when they have Macaulay or Neil and Hannah have their big. The phrase is, they understood each other as if they were the only two people on the planet. I also want to go into a little of where's the origin of Michael Mann's crime obsession come from? And I think I've got something where, so Michael Mann was an uncredited screenwriter on Straight Time, the Dustin Hoffman movie. Was it Oleg Grossbard that came in?
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman was going to direct it, and right at near the he kind of backed out and had someone else direct it. And I think Michael Mann was his screenwriter, even though he wasn't credited. Michael Mann did a lot of research at Folsom, I believe, Folsom Prison, and
don't forget, he did a lot of TV crime screenplays, scripts for TV shows,
like
Vegas and lots of other ones, like one of the cop shows.
But there's something that Michael Mann's whole thing is about his. We'll talk about this also. His sense of like he says he does a lot of research. He wants to show off all his research. He wants to make everything feel lived in or real if you don't know exactly what's happened. Michael Mann is such a great talker about his research, and that sometimes you don't know if he's bullshitting or not to a certain extent, because especially he has the same research, and that's why I want to get into this. So, at Folsom, or when he's writing Straight Time, I guess is where he has to meet. Straight Time is based off of a book called No Be So Fierce by Edward Bunker.
Eddie Bunker, who if you've paid close attention to Walter Hill and Tarantino films, you actually know who Eddie Bunker is.
He's Mr. Blue in Reservoir Dogs but he's the basis of Nate and Heat. He's a credited advisor, I think credited advisor on Heat. Well, that's one of the guys he brings up. That probably is a. I really want to read No Beast So Fierce.
And
It's
then I think another Animal Factory with Steve
yeah,
Buscemi film. That's an Eddie
yeah.
Bunker screenplay. The and Eddie Bunkers was really good friends with Danny Trejo. Of course, Trejo's in Heat.
Mm-hmm.
They were both. I don't know if they're in the same prison or not, or something. But there's a connection there. What about? Are you going to get to this? Are you planning? Because we're going to get to Jericho Mile, which is what put him on the
It
map.
was very
Yeah.
first feature, not
Well,
a theatrical feature. It was a TV movie, but
TV movie, but theatrical in Europe.
sure, that
Yeah.
happened a lot. Well, I was going to talk a little bit about Chuck Adamson.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Chuck Adamson, and I can let you talk for a while on Dennis Farina.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
These were they were Dennis Farina is familiar to a lot of people. Chuck Addison, I mean, he wrote some Miami Vice episodes. He's the co-creator of Crime Story.
right.
Or actually, I think the thing is he was the creator and Michael Mann shepherded it through. But they were cops.
Yeah.
They were partners together.
In Chicago.
And Adamson actually killed the real Neil McCauley back. I get different numbers or years, but I believe Mann has said 1963 a few times.
Well, the whole scene where they De Niro Pacino meet, that actually happened in a variation in real life.
When we get to LA Takedown, what's funny about that is the real version of that scene happened in a parking lot where Adamson was going with McCauley was getting his dry cleaning, and in LA Takedown, it's in a dry cleaning parking lot.
Right, and the Chuck Adamson and Farina, and there's another guy named a thief, a Santucci. They're all they show up in Thief, playing actually characters, and were advisors to Michael when he does that. And then we go back up to the
John
previous film,
Santucci.
Jericho Mile, with you talking about homework and research. He did hang out and get a lot of beat for the film.
But these three people keep coming up over and over
True.
and over, and they're close lifelong friends with Michael Mann. And so he keeps touting this research, which is a lot of ride-alongs. He also talks about a lot of LAPD ride-alongs he was doing with the I forget the then chief of police in the LAPD chief of police at the time. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna like he's doing his research, but he talks about the same three people a lot.
Yeah.
The development of this supposedly he started in the first mentions. There's a 180-page script in 1979 that he was supposedly working on after Thief, and he wanted Walter Hill to direct for a while.
The Heat 2?
No, Heat.
Oh, Heat.
The original Heat.
You wanted Hill. It's interesting. I always, I'm really curious about the relationship and closeness, if there is closeness to Walter and Michael, because they share a lot of
Sensibilities.
They share a lot of the same actors and different things and tropes and their Peck and Paul. A lot of times, especially Hill got compared to Peck and Paul. They both have. Walter has the Peck and Paul connection doing the screenplay for The Getaway. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see a collaboration with them together, as opposed. I mean, did you think the collaboration on Aviator worked with Mann and Scorsese?
I don't know. I don't know if it was a real collaboration.
Yeah,
you don't get a sense of that
because
he also I think you've mentioned this before, not here, that Mann's on Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think okay, but.
Well, now I want to talk about LA Takedown. You had the tape.
Yeah, I had the tape and I recorded, and I didn't. I never got around to watching it before Heat came along, and that's what Todd. It's always colored Todd's viewing of Heat, and
You saw it after Heat, though, right?
Yeah, I finally watched it at one point. I've kind of forgotten most.
If you're this is the other reason why I think this book was a reason I wanted to go through it, just because this is a movie that a passion project for Michael Mann that at one point he was going to turn into a TV show, and LA Takedown was the backdoor pilot that there was a fight over. The main actors are Scott Flank and Alex MacArthur,
right?
And I think it's tricky to measure their performance because the other version is De Niro and Pacino.
Well, yeah, and he's working on a TV budget. It's the pilot.
They shot for 20 days, and Heat shot from February 21st, 1995 till June 1995. I've seen this. I think this is my second or third time watching LA Takedown. It is, especially if you love Heat, you need to watch LA Takedown. It is a coolest film school. I cannot think of any greater example of like this is what time adds you, this is what better casting adds you, or more measured casting does, because the like take down the seat of his pants, almost everything except being pared down that happens in Heat happens in. And also, this is also a great example of like not every screenplay needs to be cut to its bone, because LA Takedown is Heat cut to its bone, and yet Heat is the much more richer. I love Michael Mann always calls Heat the chorus. It is just the best film school, I think, or a great film school.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't get, and how many opportunities do you ever get to go back and revisit something that you're a passion of yours, and you get to actually get the money and do it right, or you feel like you're getting to do it right.
Yeah, and the other weird thing about it, there's two things that I note about LA Takedown. I also want to mention Neil McCauley. They didn't use his real name; they call him Pat, which is what you would think someone would do. And then in Heat, they use his real name.
Yeah, but yeah, I think of course, yeah, that was probably closer to when Neil had been taken down in real life.
And the other real quick thing I wanted to mention was that it has a relatively different ending, even though there's a hand holding at the end.
But we were talking about,
different TV show projects?
Yeah, different TV shows and stuff. It was in 2002 to 2003, 13 episodes of a series called Robbery Homicide Division.
What year is it?
2002 to 3.
I don't remember. Is it like a CBS show?
Yeah, it was I think it was on USA Network.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think it was finally. It's funny, they didn't give the green light to LA Takedown, but because of Heat and other things, it looks like it came to fruition in a sort of in this series, but it didn't last only 13 episodes.
Well, I mean, you're always the one that's trying to tell me. I feel behind watching Michael Mann's. I've watched Luck. I've watched a little bit of Tokyo Vice, but I'm largely behind on most of his TV stuff. And
yeah,
the Miami Vice I remember as a child.
Yeah, ironically, I just bought from one of my buddies the complete Blu-ray box set of Miami Vice, and I'm kind of excited about it because I want to dive in. I want to go back and go through the. I don't know if I've seen every single episode, but at the time it was.
He's kind of only involved with the first 3 seasons, though, right?
True. But it's a lot of fun there.
Yeah. All right. Getting back again to the book.
Sorry.
We knew this is the reason we're doing this, because it's an expansive universe. This conversation would be expansive. Early on in the book, I remember one of my favorite things. First off, Chris, the Val Kilmer character, is one of the major characters in this.
He becomes the focus because he's really the only major survivor of the movie.
Sure.
So that's why it makes sense that we're going to focus in on him. But Michael and his co-writer do the interesting thing. We jump back and forth in time, and it's all divided up into segments. And we get to go back to Chicago. We see a very young Chris.
Well, I was going to mention the LA stuff, because one of the first things in the book is it gives you a little bit of a sequel of what happens right immediately after the events of the movie.
Yeah, it must be kind of fun. Like it's kind of like the what was the Star Wars, the Rogue movie, which ends
Rogue One,
which ends with Darth Vader. The very beginning of the Star Wars.
It begins with a new, or ends where New Hope begins.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I always felt that kind of vibe when I picked the book up and I started reading it. It just picks up right when Heat ends.
Well, the beginning. I was gonna say the chronology is weird because there's the beautiful scene at the end of the movie with his last scene was Ashley Judd playing Charlene, and the chronology, he's out of it at the beginning of the book. He's really out of it.
I mean, you're talking about what are you talking about?
Chris,
and it's because of his wound. You're talking about literally.
They write it in a way where I don't like. Because of his wound.
He's really. In fact, it's There's a little tweaking there, I think. So
okay. There was a little tweaking. Maybe
seems like because he actually driving the car and to where she's at.
Right.
Whereas
that's exactly why I was thinking that, because he seems way more incapacitated.
But you gotta have that great scene though, where she does the wave off.
They're in the book they recount that, and they call there was this great phrase they use, like a roulette wave, blackjack wave. Yeah. It's so
well in the movie. I mean, there's like 3 or 4. I go back to that. I've talked about this in several podcasts. I think what makes a great movie, a great masterpiece, are those small little scenes that are sprinkled throughout it. That it's not the big fight scene or not the big gun battle or the robbery in downtown LA.
Although it is a little.
Well, yeah, but you got to have that to make it the big masterpiece. Epic.
Well, so much directing is getting the details right.
Yeah, it just that little wave off that Ashley did was just so such a sublime moment.
I think on the commentary he even says like he was so surprised by her acting that face in that scene. He's talking about her face, I think, but like you said, that hand motion is
Yeah.
a very iconic hand motion.
And then when she sits back down, and there's and he has several of those small moments that you remember.
And I think one of the good things about the book is there's those in as much as Meg Gardiner is. I have not read much of anything of hers, so I won't. All right, going back into the book, the first confrontation, you find out the aftermath of Edie, played by Amy Brenneman. What happens to her afterwards?
That's cool.
One of my favorite. I feel like Michael Mann was either aware of this. They go to her apartment, and her apartment is featured in the documentary Los Angeles Plays Itself. And there's a joke in there where they show the scene where De Niro and Brenneman are look over L.A. I think it's above Sunset Plaza, and they make a crack about, oh yeah, because all book clerks can afford an apartment over Sunset Plaza.
It's so funny that's brought. Yeah, that's mentioned. That's pointed out because when you're watching it and they're sitting on the balcony talking. At first, I think they're back at De Niro's place. Because I'm thinking, there's no way she can have a place like this, and it is her place.
Yeah.
So
they say that she's a very specialized book clerk. The store that Neil went to has to get specialized books, so she is paid above grade. Then the end of that scene was one of those first like kicks where Amy Brenneman seems like. What were your feelings in the movie about her character at the end?
Well, see, that's. Even as much as I love Heat, there's a couple of things I keep on struggling with. They're not as I don't struggle with them as much as, and the more I watch it, the more I listen to the commentary, the more I think about it. They're smoothing out better. But I never was convinced that Edie, the way Brenneman plays Edie, that she would all of a sudden run off with a criminal like that.
She seems really kind of dazed in the book, kind of attributes to that too. But in LA Takedown, she doesn't go with them. Yeah. So there's this moment where she's just dazed talking to Hannah, and Hannah's doing his whole like he's really sharp. He's getting all the details out of her, and the end of it was one of those first signs of like, oh, this is gonna be good. Where Hannah tells her, "I killed Neil." Like the description there is like, this is gonna be good. Her tone changes completely in that. But then, all right, did you have anything else you want to talk about with the LA stuff?
No, but it was nice to do the little recap to get you going.
And even just like you said, just a little bit of like what was the immediate stuff that like happened, right?
Right.
Well, then we get to Vegas, and I thought the Charlene backstory was one of those ones where I think he had I don't know how evident it is.
Well, you kind of jumped over because they've already been in Chicago when they're driving back to LA.
I thought they go to Vegas right away.
I don't think they go to Vegas right away.
There's a beginning of the Vegas, and then they go to Chicago.
Well,
I think because the Vegas stuff is divided into two. Because he goes to Vegas after
to meet her. He meets her. We get the whole story.
Yeah,
that's back during the early Chicago day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the Vegas thing's part of the Chicago thing. It's the very beginning. All right. We're on the same page.
Okay.
For a book podcast, we're on the same page. No, I just thought that I guess was there some like do you think Charlene, as played by Ashley Judd, is a former escort in the movie? Because in the book is just like, oh, this fits perfectly. And Michael Mann loves to talk about how like he knows all his characters in her lives, but.
To be honest with you, I haven't really thought that through. When I did watch it recently, I did kind of try to put that backstory into Ashley Judd's character. I'm not sure if it's playing 100% with me yet.
Okay.
But
it's a great expansive piece of writing.
Charlene in the book is kind of she's kind of a spitfire of a character, and more so than Ashley is in some ways.
I don't think it's that different. I mean, she's a protective mother that's tired of her criminal husband that she loves, and they have a very fierce, very, very passionate, which is how it's written.
It's interesting that both the guys that Ashley and Dinah Verona, they both kind of have dweeby guys they sleep with. That's and compared to De Niro and Pacino, Hank Azaria is not the most You know,
That seems like a casting like a commentary on like our main stars have got to be virulent
well,
males, and
and they were
and
also
they're being duped by these.
well, the both women were also just doing this in spite of they were
The spite. I think the
yeah,
spite is a
and so like
key
they're
part.
not, I guess you don't have to be that picky when you're just going to do this to get back at your husband. Uh,
Okay, well now we can get fully into Chicago, the which
it's really more Hannah, young Hannah, and
Neil's a big part of
yeah,
it.
not as big as I. Well, at least this is how I perceive
Okay,
it.
okay.
Maybe your perception is
At
different.
least at the beginning.
But in Chicago sequence, it's what 60. Is it the 68 or is it what is the
No, it's
year?
88.
88 Chicago.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
yeah,
Way
because
off. Well, when does he take place? The movie.
94.
Okay.
I think it takes place when it comes out, 94, 95.
Okay.
Because we're going to get into this, but both Hannah and Macaulay were Vietnam vets.
Right, but I liked how you really get the concentration. I think you get the concentration of building it because you're gonna get a lot of Neil in the Mexican sequence. The Mexican
Sure,
sequence. So
and
I think it balances out.
there's no tension with Macaulay that like you don't really get a sense that Hannah and him meet in heat. So you don't really get a sense that it's going to be cute that they, even though they're in the same city, that they. There's also just like when you watch the movie, did you ever get any sense that that Hannah has any Chicago in him, besides the fact that his creator is from Chicago?
Yeah, true. I never thought about that.
And he's based on a Chicago cop,
But
or maybe.
I kind of like the fact that to me it looked like Mann and his co-writer were giving you a little bit of the early evolution of the Hannah we see in the movie. Some of the mannerisms
no,
and the way he there's a sequence with a young girl victim in a hospital bed that plays out very interesting, and you see that happen in the movie with the prostitute that's killed in the parking lot,
the mom of the prostitute,
and then his stepdaughter, how the relationship with stepdaughter. So there's this whole thing.
The sensitive underbelly.
Yeah, the sensitive that you don't.
The guy that has the nightmares where he sees all the people he's investigated, their victims.
Which is the difference. And of course, the man will quickly point out to you if you listen to the commentaries he did for the Heat and stuff. You know the difference between there are similarities between Hannah and Neil, but there's also it separates them from being Neil still is a psychopath.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, you mentioned the word psychopath. We should get into this. So the biggest notable thing about the book is its villain, Otis Wardell. And he is an out and out psychopath. I think he's Waingro.
He's Waingro to me.
The Waingro character from Heat expanded and given more intelligence and ability and agency.
It's interesting. I just got done rewatching all 5 Alien films, not the ones with the Predators, but just the major 5.
Okay.
And
wait, isn't there 6?
There's
Prometheus.
Is there 6? Okay,
Alien
6.
Aliens, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection.
Okay, stand corrected 6.
Sure. Sorry, I wasn't trying to correct you.
Want to count? You can make it 7, 8 if you want to count the.
If you want to count the Predator movies, sure. Yeah, sorry.
But there's seems that's one thing about. Well, it's just like Gene Austen books or the Bud Boetticher, Randolph Scott movies, or all these things. You have these similarities that echo each other, and you get to play with them. Several times, and I think the Waingro, how he is portrayed in Heat,
kind of like the author and auteurist.
Yeah, the thing,
rhymes,
variation of a theme. And you get now, he makes him Otis in Heat because he is just he's almost like a. I can't think of the right word. He's almost supernatural. He's almost as evil.
You said that before. Yeah. I maybe see that. I don't know. Well, what I find fascinating is like the one psychopath that he's done really well is the Tooth Fairy, Dollarhide in Manhunter.
Right.
There's a clear evolution of that, whereas that psychopath is operatic and he wants to sympathize with and kind of show the damage in her life. There.
Well, actually, you could go back. He can portray. He's into some of the greatest evil things that make you cringe in the theater. When we find out that James Caan is now going to have to answer to Robert Brodsky.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Brodsky just becomes evil incarnate when he's bending over and looking at Caan, talking to him about, now you're mine. And then to keep, you're playing with actual evil with a capital E.
Well, I'd argue there's a little bit of a problem with the keep there, where
Formula.
the fairy tale isn't
Right, but
the best
it
part.
actually, the evil is actually formed into a body
Yeah.
right in front of your eyes. And then Manhunter, you got Hannibal, and how
And the Tooth Fairy.
yeah, Tooth Fairy, and how Graham has to. But the Tooth, actually, there's the interesting about that.
Actually, you're right about that. Hannibal is kind of like pure evil in there too.
Yeah, because in Tooth Fairy, there's that one sequence where you think, oh, he might.
That's what I'm pointing out.
He might.
Yeah.
He might become good.
Or
stop.
The love of another woman
yeah.
or someone, just anybody.
Yeah, and you almost, and then you lose it, and you go, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
But Brian Cox is just, I just love, I can't, I prefer him over. People kill me for this, but I prefer him over Anthony Hopkins.
You keep saying like this puts you on an isolated.
It does
there's a
seem like,
lot of people. That
you think so?
I think a lot of people love it.
I just came across a person the other day who loves all the Hannibal Lecter films and seen Red Dragon. I said, well, I told her about Manhunter and Brian Cox. She goes, oh gosh, really? I had no idea. I need to see that.
Oh, so, I think
I keep on coming across a lot of people like that.
Well, I think the Red Dragon TV show also took that out the window because there's an argument that that is a really amazing take on all the Thomas Harris universe too. I do want to go back to Macaulay though, real quickly. I want to talk to you about this in Tarantino's cinema speculation book. He has this not that long. He's talking about the Parker novels. The
Parker novels, yeah.
And he thinks Macaulay is the greatest cinematic example of the Parker because he says the Parker ether. I
think so. I mean, well, just the fact that.
Well, I say this not having read the Parker novels outside of the great adaptations.
Well, you've seen Point Blank.
I've seen the movies, and the point in the book he's making is the movies are dead, but the
Darwin Cook.
The Darwin, thank you, the Darwin Cook Hunter adaptations. Yeah.
But the fact that they're so self-contained, self-sustained, they could just come and go, and
Tarantino really hones down on the like hardness to be able to leave your life in 20 seconds flat.
Right. Yeah, that's really. That's what I remember. I mean, De Niro repeats the mantra that James Caan gives us in Thief. And Parker's like that, and even like I think some of this. Now we bump this pop over to Paul Schrader and the man, God's Lonely Man.
Well, and in Man in particular, like I think it's been pointed out that time is luck or time is destiny or something like that. That line has appeared in almost every single one of his movies, and I think a form of it.
Well, I love that. I hate that we get off heat too because that's the whole point of this podcast. But I mean, another great scene. Michael Mann has such great cinematic scenes in history. Cinematic history is that piece of paper with the montage where James Caan shows Tuesday Weld, this is my life here.
The early vision board.
Yeah,
not to diminish it because James Caan, I should mention that commentary. Listen to that commentary on Thieves, the Criterion thing. It is such a charm because one of the things is James Caan takes Michael Mann to task and bullshits him because they're friends. The commentary is recorded while either he's about to film Heat or he is filming Heat. But James Caan also says that scene's the greatest scene he's ever been in.
Oh, well, it just resonates into my life all the time. It's just amazing how that scene is just
Ted,
really...
you can get a vision board if you want one.
Yeah. Well, my whole house is a vision board.
Yeah, okay. Well,
the interior of
Tarantino's observation was, I think, I feel like it's our private conversations, how you felt about the end of the movie. Your first viewing, especially, that sequence, the thing I said was my favorite shot one of my favorite shots in all movies.
Right off the bat.
With the exposure when they're going through the tunnel. And Neil...
with that scene, yeah.
Neil decides that he can escape and he'll be fine, or he can go for revenge and break his code. And I think there's so much in the execution of that, especially.
And he always sort of broken his code by taking Edie along. That's the first step.
That's where I think he really breaks
his
code.
He breaks the code
his code there.
And then
I think that's the real choice that he makes that breaks his code. That is the real
right.
And so the him having to go back and kill somebody who's wronged him. We're going to get into this also later in the book as we talk about Neil's chapters in Mexico, where he has to go after Waingro, but
Otis.
He doesn't go after. No, he has to go over Waingro in Heat 2 or Heat the original, but in Heat 2 he doesn't go after Otis after a certain thing that happens. That seems a little inconsistent to me. And there's a little
inconsistent or consistent. No, he does. I thought he's in character. This is what makes him really finalize the code in his heart. is in the book, he's not going to connect to the daughter of the woman that he loves.
Mm-hmm.
He has no more communication with her, none, and he doesn't go after Otis.
Yeah,
So
his chapter is really the beginning of that speech of
right,
like
and that's really solidifies that, and he's been living that way until he breaks it with Edie in the movie.
So going after Waingro is breaking his code.
Twice
over.
Twice over, yeah. Because he wasn't going to do that. And he probably possibly could get away with Edie, but that scene you love is an accident. But Mann used it to show his change of mind and says, "I'm going after him." Yeah, that's where he has that when the light flashes over.
I mean, but Tarantino's point was that that's the point where the movie, like, he knows what's going to happen at the end, where it's going to end up too.
Yeah, well, so it was, and Quentin did like that because he knew how it was going to end. Is that what?
The movie was electric to him until that point.
Well, I just, to my mind, we have been so engaged with Hannah and Macaulay, and their epic struggle, to have it come down to this little gunfight in an airport field. I remember thinking,
he said, "If you see me coming around the corner,"
right? But I wanted something. I don't know what you could do to.
How keep it operatic,
keep it that big of an ending. But as I've come to grips with it. I mean, I'm over and over, and of course, I love when the Moby music starts. Of course, that helps. It helps it out a lot.
The Moby cue is a great.
But it's just yeah. At first, I'm thinking, oh man, I wanted something bigger for the. But I mean, it comes down. I mean, Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson, Once Upon a West. It just comes down to them. To a gunfight.
One shot, yeah.
One shot, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in that sequence is much more emotional on repeat viewing.
And it is kind of, Mann loved having that airfield and the lights, of the airplanes coming and going. So you thought that was really a visual, and then you start maybe putting a subtext to it. He could have been on that plane leaving. He could, he's right underneath his escape and he's not escaping. So you can play with that.
Let's finish up Chicago real quick. For starters, one of the funny things I love about Hannah being a Chicago cop is this is one of those tiny things that for me is like, I love Heat. One of the things that like over the years, especially from the cast of Miami Vice, I think Drew McWeeny pointed this out. Michael Mann, by his casting, is a very big fan of The Wire, which we've also done an episode on. And one of the things I love about The Wire is it's cops and robbers, but with a lot of bureaucracy. And so one of the issues for the cops is their budgets. That's a big issue. And Hannah, throughout all this, you're just like, he's giving resource after resource. Every time he comes up to another person, he's like, I want you to look into every phone book and every resident in that blocks and find out everything they did that for the last 3 days. And you're like, he has an endless amount of resources that maybe not, just for a thief would not, a mayor would not give that. And then but the weird thing I think that like, is just tiny, not aged Heat well, especially post The Wire and especially in the defund the police era, is Mann likes cops in two of the most arguably corrupt police departments in the country. Chicago has notorious since LAPD has its Rampart scandal. I mean, New York cop is probably the only one. And then to be fair, 3 biggest cities in the country, so they're going to have historic issues at some point or another in their police force.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you point that out. I really don't bother with that. Because it's nice because we've had so much movies about corruption.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not saying this is a defund the police issue. I'm just saying it's more like it's sometimes hard to root for the existential cop when when a lot of narratives sometimes are about there's a lot of cop corruption stuff.
Right. So. Well,
or even going to The Wire, there's a lot of good cops and a lot of like that you could get behind, but there's a lot of bigger issues than just getting the bad guy.
Well, if you say so.
You're punting on that one. Back to the Edie's apartment. Hannah, again, I think this is another dig. Hannah's first non-cop scene, or I think it's even his first scene, he's overlooking Lakeshore Drive. He has like this really big condo, and it turns out it's his girlfriend's apartment, but still, Hannah just really has some scenic views. He has access to some really expensive scenic views.
Oh no, Hannah Macaulay's got the scenic view. Hannah's
Hannah, it was Hannah and his girlfriend.
Right, but not in L.A. I don't know where they're living, what neighborhood.
Oh, right, sure. Yeah. But all these guys have.
Yeah, I mean. But that's part of that's Hollywood.
Hannah's got a postmodernist bullshit house at some point.
You're not taking my TV.
And then there's a scene where Hannah openly does cocaine.
Right. Well, and we now know.
They took years to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, before we revealed the fact that when you watch Heat, there's a couple of scenes that you just can't avoid where you're either going, well, that's crazy, or you laugh.
You want a justification for like Michael Mann talks about. He gave Pacino the one go wild take, and
give me what you got. Give me what you got.
He's got a big ass. Is the big.
Yeah.
I feel like after the fact, this is where he says they shot a cocaine thing for
they
it.
did. Yeah, they did.
He says that, and they didn't put it in.
But the fact is, we now know that Hannah, is a little bit on the take with some drugs, and it explains now when you look at it, you go, okay, that explains it. And plus, he's on. I mean, when does the dang guy sleep? And that's part of the problem with the husband and wife thing, the relationship going on too.
Right.
So he's just got to go, 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 go. He keeps them sharp. He keeps them, on the mark. So we get, So we can put that to the side. We can just finally just reveal that in the book.
Sure. And I mean, it's such the book has to have so many details that this is not. He didn't want it weighed down as Hannah's big thing that he's a coke addicted detective, but he has to have that sharpness. Wes Studi's character Cazles he's a cop in Chicago with them.
Yeah.
Hannah had to have enough of a budget to take people with them, apparently.
Well, I think Hannah. We get the feeling. I mean, I don't know about you, but Hannah's track record in Chicago gets him to L.A., and he gets a little bit of some perks with that.
This is why I bring up the cops, robbers, the budget stuff. Like, it's just like, is this how police like, and the FBI like, is this how they really work? Is this a romanticized version of it?
Well, I didn't do homework on police and FBI procedures and cops and how they get to have work a team up and then get to keep the team.
You do exist in a culture where cops and robber stories are very, very, very often told.
This is also Hollywood. That's entertainment. Da, da, da.
Well, you don't like a lot of reality in your stories. Okay. Hannah is.
And you don't trust Mann, and you don't trust Mann that Mann would not do. I mean, he would. He's
this gets back to the research thing where it's just like he touts his research really well. I'm in a basement in Indiana, so I have to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
But all right, all right, let's go with God.
I think I don't know why that's trips you up a little bit. Seems like. I don't
know, Ted. I read nonfiction that's beyond pop culture stuff sometimes here and there.
Okay, well there you go.
Hannah is from. They talk about his backstory. He is from Northeast St. Louis, Granite City. He went to SIU, the Edwardsville chapter, but he went to a college that's just an hour and a half from me. Well, his college is not an hour and a half from here, but Southern Illinois is the main campus is only an hour and a half from here. And him and, as I mentioned earlier, both him and Neil went to Vietnam. Neil was offered a ranger position. He turned it down, but this is where he learned the guerrilla fighting techniques that he had to use in downtown LA at that one point.
Right. There's a whole movie, movie fans out there will chastise me for not knowing this off the hand. It's a cool little English film. I think Jack Hawkins is in it. But it's about these guys are ex-military guys, and they're hurting for money. And they just say, okay, let's get together and use our military skills to rob a bank.
I think there's been a few movies where
probably
the military would.
So that's a really interesting little trope they use all the time.
Now we can move on to Paraguay with Chris. Paraguay 95-96, Chris.
So they're basically, what's interesting, they both use, out of the movie, we get to see the John Voight character and the Ted Noonan character help Chris get out of the country.
Well, this is also where it gets. You feel like I'm seeing multiple Michael Manns of different eras, multiple Michael Mann movies in one story, and just little things like there's. Did you feel like some of the technology they use? I think it's mainly in the later Paraguay section, or when they start to branch out, where it's like this is a little too modern for this era. Some of the technology they're talking about.
Well, yeah.
The electronic warfare, I guess.
Right. Look, so I was going to say basically when I mentioned some of the characters that help Chris get out to Paraguay, Mann takes full advantage of all the characters that are still living from the first film. You can put them in the book and utilize them.
Nate in particular.
Yeah, and Chris gets down to Paraguay. I felt with the Paraguay sequence at first I was like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy this. And then as it got deeper and deeper into it, I got into it, but it was more like a dreamscape to me. It was a weird, and I think that plays into the futuristic aspect of it. That I felt like I was untethered in some little dreamscape of technology and families and crime that are to me around the corner. Any moment you could get killed or something could happen. And Chris is he is on his tiptoes getting through this minefield of trying to survive. But as he gets more secure in it with the family, this one particular family, crime family, we see we see an evolution in Chris, and we see also the how you can go back to the movie and watch Val Kilmer and see. Oh, you can apply that to the book.
There's a thing in the movie where he's a young kid who, like in the book, explains it in a really interesting way where he's really focused when he's with Neil. And Neil's his brother. They went to prison together. They were, I think they were in Folsom together, actually. But when he's not with Neil, he's got a bad gambling problem. And you see Chris grow up. The other thing I was going to say, you mentioned the family. This also feels like a section where there's a little bit of Miami Vice, the movie, and Black Hat in here, in that Chris falls in love with this young Asian woman. It's a Taiwanese woman named Anna in this one, who is a daughter or really high up in the criminal enterprise.
Exactly, you pinpointed just right. It's again the variation of the themes of things he loves to play with. So why not throw in some Black Hat? Why not throw in Miami Vice, the movie Miami Vice?
Yeah, the movie.
Keep that in mind. The whole relationship with Farrell and Gong Li is so much in the stylistics of the book with his I forgot what the girl's name, Patty or Kathy, I can't remember what her name is.
In Black Hat?
In the book.
It's Anna.
Anna
Lou.
And she is and she's a piece of work. She's really fun to I really got a kick out of her. I mean, it's a typical crime.
Is she like Cambridge educated? She's reading a lot of like U.S. News and World Report or something like that.
So fun. I mean, she's almost too true to be true, because she's you really built her up in the book, and it's a typical. And you've seen this scenario before, where you get a big family of traditional old school crime family. Father has to have the son be the heir, the successor to the family, and he's just a weakling. No good. He's gonna screw it up, and it's the daughter, the sister, that is the smart one, the cool one. And Chris obviously sinks in right with her, and then you got the guy in charge of security and the bodyguard,
mm-hmm.
who's the old school. He's just he's like a Macaulay type sort of. But he has to win his respect, so that's also kind of fun to watch, isn't it? And these are things
to read.
We see to read. And we've seen this before, but it's all done in another new variation.
Well, I want to talk real briefly with the honest stuff about Michael Mann. Like, we talked about this, I think, on the Keep episode a lot, and I don't know if it's in the Keep episode. I think I at least thought it was like a very dude-centric idea of existentialist romance stuff, but I just find Mann is like such a great romantic in his stuff, and so I was trying to.
Well, gosh, I mean, what's one of the most romantic scenes of all time? Again, I keep on saying all these great scenes, and Mann's responsible for them. That's Mohicans. That sequence where Madeleine Stowe and Daniel Day-Lewis come in and embrace each other across on the fortress. Well, how romantic can you get? And then there's waterfall sequence.
Mm-hmm.
I will find you no matter what. I will.
Well, it was just
stay alive.
My point is, Michael Mann's been married since 1974 to the same woman.
Well, there you go.
I
mean, and he's got what, 3-4 daughters? He's got interesting.
One of his daughters is got into film too.
Yeah, Killing Texas Field or that. They were all working on Heat, I think. When on the commentary, I think he mentioned so.
Really?
I think they were all helping him out.
I didn't hear that. Well, I do want to read also. It's I don't know if it's in this. Oh no, this is in the Mexico section. Uh, the other thing that keeps coming up, going all the way back to Straight Time, is Michael Mann's existential love of the idea of prison, whether it's a prison on your everyday life or just literally, it's Jericho Mile.
Yeah.
Jericho Mile. It's talked about in Thief. Keep is kind of a prison. It's a
in prison. He's keeping evil imprisoned.
And this maybe goes away against my theory, but there is a prison in the Keep. Obviously, Manhunter, they go to prison. Last Mohican, is there like a
well, maybe the fortress. I mean, there was. You probably if you stop and think about it, you could probably find something.
He doesn't have a prison, but the Spectre of prison is over it. Insider and Ollie have like the threat of going to prison. Collateral. Does he say at some point I'm not going back to? No one was in prison. Vincent was in the system. He was in the child care system at some point. So that's kind of a.
Well, no, but the taxi driver, Jimmy.
He wasn't. He didn't.
Wasn't he an ex-convict?
No.
Oh.
No.
What was his background?
His mom is sick, and he's been a taxi driver for way longer than he said because he's trying to start a company.
Oh, okay.
Then Miami Vice prison. There's so much prison in there. In Black Hat, Chris Hemsworth gets out of prison.
Right.
It's just prison. So I'm gonna read this thing from page 241. We're all footprints on a beach. The tide comes through, and you were never there. A guy named Albert Camus wrote that. She tilts her head. What kind of name is that? French, Neil says. Eliza looks at him, her eyes shining in the dark. I'm here now. Exactly. That's the point. We're here now. No big reason we exist. No purpose. No heaven or hell waiting on how we pray. The only real question is, why keep on living? Is life worth it? Why not just kill yourself? The only judgment is how we use the now. I don't want to put an end to it. If this is what we have, better live it. Yeah, all we have is this moment. We live it, conscious of what it means. Nothing, but completely live it. That's what it is. And then, where you read this, she asks. Folsom. What's my life? Why do the time? Why am I doing? What's any of this mean? Hit the library and said, where's the philosophy about why we're here, about time? What's my life mean? Dude with the book card turns me on to Camus. That's the Michael Mann's obsession with prison. This book has those little just like revelations of like whether he's just like because there's so much denseness in here in a good way that with a propulsive narrative, and then suddenly he can just be like, I can tell you straight up this is where this comes from, and even in form of it's repeated itself throughout the movies.
So now that you've mentioned that that's Macaulay in Mexico. So after the we have the whole Paraguay sequence, and Chris learning the ropes of he gets inducted to a family and helps them out with this competition with other families and crime groups on this new technology. Then we jump over back to Macaulay out of post Chicago. He's left Chicago, and finds out, hey, there's this money we could take down from a cartel. Where's this?
Well, that's not Hannah. That's Wardell.
Macaulay.
Okay, yeah, but I'm saying like, I thought you said Hannah was the. Sorry.
Well, if I didn't mean Macaulay. No, Hannah's. We leave Hannah for a while.
Yeah.
And we're
the Mexico section is, I think, the heart of the book.
Yeah, well, that's what I told you. Yeah, so we get and there's nothing I love than them. Explaining how they're going to do it and then executing how they're going to do it.
Even in book form?
Yeah, and it's so we go through this whole sequence of how they're going to do this. And living in here in America in 2023 and working at a TV station with news in front of me all the time, it's cartel scare the crap out of me. Well, and so I'm thinking, even back, even then I'm thinking, man, don't mess with cartel money.
Well, okay, yeah, well, yeah, well, for starters, okay. so much of the prose in this book, especially in some of the tenser parts of this section, reads like this really good hybrid of screenwriter and novelist, because big into the like very short one sentence paragraph or beat to create tension and things like that. Michael Mann's scripts are very dense but very fun to read, and they read like a normal script. But the real appeal, I think, of this book, originally I got this wrong, but I thought when these books were first announced, I want to say it was like 2016 when he first made the deal. Mann made a 3-book deal, and he wanted to do a book about Tony Accardo and Sam Giancana, and that was going to be written by Don Winslow. And I thought Don Winslow was originally going to write Heat. I don't know. I think I just misread that before Meg Gardiner came aboard. But I feel like I've mentioned this on a few episodes before. But Don Winslow's books are just they're so propulsive. They're so plot denseness.
What's he mainly known for?
Well, he's known for the Border trilogy. He's known for the Cartel, and that's where I also thought this section might have been a Don Winslow inspired thing. Don Winslow's also blurbed on the back of the book, Heat 2 book. There's a 3-picture deal, and I think the 3rd book's going to be. We'll get to this when we get to the end of the book, but I'm pretty sure that's Heat 3. Yeah, Meg Gardiner. Again, I have never, you know. I haven't read any of her books. She was
surprised. You're usually on the you're usually on top of the latest great writers.
Well, she's a former lawyer who I think she spent time in London, but she was in Austin at the same time as me. And what's crazy is she was a former Jeopardy winner. And so like our episode we did with The Keep, we did with my friend Lonnie Gonzalez, who is also a former Jeopardy winner. And we used to go to trivia nights together with other Jeopardy winners, because Austin had this weird population of Jeopardy winners, and so I didn't know if I'd ever overlap with Meg Gardiner. I don't think I did.
Oh, that's crazy too, because my station airs Jeopardy, so I probably saw both of them without even knowing what the connection would ever be on that.
I real briefly before we get back to the Mexico session, like when part of the reason I gave you such crap about not reading this fast is when we did the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novelization, you read it as fast as the rest of us.
Oh my gosh! Well, yeah, but
and both of them are great. These are great filmmakers who also happen to be great writers. Whose a lot of their screenplay style comes out in these books.
But there's a difference. That's a novelization of
a story, that's pretty different from
but I'm saying it's already a done deal. This is, Heat 2 is like, okay, what's going to happen? It's a what if story.
As Alan Moore famously said in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, but aren't they all?
You know about, DC used to call their, like a Superman had a boy, which she does now in the canon, I think.
Yeah.
But it was, when they do the, or if Jimmy Olsen was Superman or blah, 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 they would call them imaginary stories. And Alan Moore goes, aren't they all imaginary stories?
I love how we do this in Alan Moore voice.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Just something about. I thought you were talking about the speculation book, because I read that even faster, because that's nonfiction.
Yeah, we were just talking about this today off air. I think all of us read it too fast. We're overdue to reread it.
Right, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is revisiting the movie, but with different aspects in the foreground and the stuff in the movie in the background almost. So.
Okay, I mean, it was. I get that. But they're like,
well, it's a co-writer. Will it be turned into a movie? It's prose, pure prose.
Yeah, I guess all these are not disqualified.
I don't know. I don't know why.
I don't mean to give you shit about this.
I don't know why the delay, but I mean, I did it. I got through it. I love it. We're talking about it now, so
okay.
And I may I will reread portions at least, if not the whole book again, because the Macaulay sequence, like I said, in Mexico, I was like I'm telling you, I was in Kansas City in a barbecue restaurant, sitting at a table reading the sequence where the girl Otis is attacking him, and
Eliza's the girl, yeah,
and the death sequence of the woman and Bill Cully's girlfriend.
As we warned in the beginning, we were spoiling this, but because this sequence, what's beautiful about this is the origin of the not walking out speech. I mean, it's a little telegraphed. You know it's going to happen a little. Yeah. You don't know how it's going to happen, so that's one of the tense things about it.
But yeah, so he gets caught up, and they get the money, but Otis, I don't even read the book, but Otis gets. Oh no, Otis is on the trail. There's a reason he's on Macaulay's trail because of Chicago. the all Hannah
one
things
of one of
leaked up.
one of the people they worked with,
Yeah,
kind of one of the civilian kind of people that they worked with, kind of gives them
and
away and gets killed
ironically,
really violently.
ironically, Otis is on the run because of Hannah, and he's on the run, and he picks up Macaulay's trail for for different reasons.
Well,
Uh,
there's a bit of
so there's
Wayne.
this really roundabout connection.
There is a little bit of logic that goes into the Waingro like similarities, where it's like the Waingro killing the guy, the truck driver, or one of the truck guards there,
Right.
just like he's like
Yeah.
he just sees this slight there that isn't there, and he's
Right.
just gonna he feels
So he stumbles into Macaulay's thing. Macaulay's successful getting the money, but it messes it all up, and he's got Macaulay's woman kept captive, and Macaulay's going to try to rescue her before it all goes to crap.
I think this is one instance I alluded to earlier. I want to talk a little more about this. This is the one part in the book so I reread it and kind of skimming through a lot of it. When that second reading, this is the part of the book where once I know what's going to happen, this is my moment of like, Neil wouldn't do that. Eliza gets killed, and
This is young Neil. This is Neil learning lessons.
I guess, and that argument does make a little sense, but there's a little bit of an explanation at the beginning of the last part of the book, where he says like he did go looking for Wardell, but he couldn't find him, there's a line at the end of this part where there's a worry because Eliza has a daughter whose character is going to come back in the last part, maybe a little too conveniently, and that Gabriella's the daughter's name. Gabriella has a lot. Wardell takes a locket off of Eliza that has Gabriella's picture in it, so he's worried that like she's going to be a target. Why would Neil go after him? And I don't know. Maybe your explanation is good.
Well, it's also, I mean, she's a little girl. It's so far. That's really pushing that. If you think that's a loose end. I mean, he obviously, once he sees, I mean, once it comes around near the end, he realizes, yeah, it was a loose end I should have taken care of. But I mean, you know, a little locket like that.
Well, no. That's the thing. The locket seems like that's especially a little girl versus the grown-up version of her.
Yeah.
But and I mean, then you start to retroactively think, well, Neil was in L.A. this whole time, and being the romantic he was, is when he's starting to break his code, would he not like look her up? Does he know she's there?
He doesn't have time. He's got to get out of town.
I guess. I mean, was Nate involved with her being relocated? It was her. It was Gabriella's uncles that were the one that relocated her.
Probably it was
so maybe he
Gabby's
didn't even know.
Parents. So we're for the people listening and they haven't read the book. So Neil. So everybody now we transfer to L.A. Getting closer. No, after Heat.
Yeah, this is 1999.
So we jump in.
Excuse me, 2000. Part 5 takes place in 2000.
Yeah, so we jump ahead now, and the incidents in Heat have happened. So Hannah's, always wondered about all this Macaulay stuff that's kind of hanging out there still, and the fact that Chris eluded them.
Chris is still a little on his brain, but it's gone away a little.
So now, and just perfect, because you're writing it, you're creating it, you can do this. Every piece of the chessboard is brought together again in L.A. Otis is in L.A. doing criminal operations. Hannah is in there. Now we know, of course, in L.A. Chris comes back because Chris and Anna and their family have some dealings they have to deal with the criminal gangs in L.A. before they take off to out of the country. So, but Chris goes, I got to see Charlene, and he wants to kill Hannah.
Yeah.
Well,
I had a friend that really hated this part of the book, thought it derailed the book for him, and I went back. From both the first reading and the second viewing, I almost said second reading. First off, that structure just says this is building towards something. Like he can't. It's not. He's not an expansive thing. He's going to build to a point too.
And it's one thing to complain about tying it all in a nice, neat bow, but sometimes it's
still a messy bow.
Yeah, and it's fun to tie it into a bow because what it turns into, we finally have all the pieces. Gabby, the little girl, Chris after he's chasing out of Hannah. Hannah's chasing down Otis. Otis has got Gabby, and we end up turning into almost hell on earth on the LA highway. It's just one big giant apocalypse of characters running around shooting and people getting killed and cars crashing.
Well,
And I could see this thing in such color. When I was reading the book, it was like in a dark orange red, just
oh my
flames
God,
everywhere.
I saw it in the same way too. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. This takes place at the 105 110 exchange in
Yeah.
LA. And put your point earlier about Heat not ending in an operatic way. This is like him designing Heat 2 to end with the bank heist. Like
Yeah.
it's this is a sequence that's going to be a jaw dropper if he can pull it
And you
off.
love it, and Chris is trying to go like, what is going on here? What is Hannah chasing? And then he sees that, and he sees the girl, and then he's able
And then
to.
they get the mutual respect for
He
each.
ends up rescuing Gabby, and he actually finds out this is Gabby and she recognizes Chris, and you go, oh, it's a kind of a moment.
The only thing that lost me was Wardell, the treatment of him as like the be all end all evil psychopath of Michael Mann in this crime world.
He won't die. He keeps
No, not even that. It's just like, why are you? He goes 12 years undercover. He goes almost like quasi legit. He takes the money from the heist and he buys a bunch of seedy hotels. I mean, he's
he's such a
he's
clever
almost-
character. He's such a clever character. You think it would be hard for him to subdue himself.
Yeah.
Subdue his.
Because I even thought like the other turned legit criminals, James Caan from Thief, and they're nothing alike.
Yeah, we also should. I need to quickly point out when I say Chris and we see Chris and Gabby reunite. Chris was part of the crew in Mexico.
Yeah, Gabby is a young girl, knew Chris,
Yeah,
and the entire Heat
and
crew.
some of the crew Macaulay has in Mexico will be the ones we see at Castrejo,
who they don't even change the name of.
they're with him in Heat in L.A. So it's just like Hannah brought some of his guys from Chicago. Macaulay's been faithful and had his group Chicago and Mexico and now in L.A.
All right, I kind of. The last thing I wanted to say was this section begins with you find out what happened to Lauren, Natalie Portman's character.
Oh yeah, which was nice. I was really happy to see that. I was curious. I was wondering because Michael Mann, especially in the audio commentary, makes a point about how Hannah and Dina Verona have probably been through 2 or 3 marriages, like their 4th marriage, or 3rd marriage, and the way they're portraying the movie. It's a really interesting couple. She knows what she's got with Hannah, and Hannah realizes that he is screwing it up. But and the outcome is Natalie Portman, the stepdaughter, tries to commit suicide, and it bonds them. She's bonding to Hannah, her stepfather, in a very special way.
But the story of the marriage continues even post divorce,
right? Even though
in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think of any relationship of ex-wives, that's probably one that would continue, especially with the daughter and how he's still supporting her and talking to her on the phone and things like that.
Last thing I want to talk about here is the potential. So if Ferrari, what's coming out in December, does well, there's a good potential that Heat 2 is going to be made. First off, so they have talked a little bit about casting ideas. Like so far, Adam Driver would probably play young Neil. Pacino would come back. Austin Butler would play Chris. And Ana de Armas is going to be in it. Now, is she going to play Eliza and Gabriella both, you think? Because there's a line in the book where they say they look alike at that age.
That's a good question. I was thinking, is there another... Oh, Anna. Or is she playing Anna? No, Anna's
Taiwanese. She's Taiwanese.
Okay. But I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, the big question I also have is who do you cast as Wardell? Because Mann is not known as needing to cast big actors who want to do a showy psychopath thing. He casts character actors in a psychopath role.
Well, you think about it. I think it could go all the way back to nobody knew who Ian McKellen was much in The Keep and some of the actors in The Keep. And then in Manhunter, Ted Noonan is not really known. And Brian Cox, both of them, were not that well known to American audiences.
Okay.
And again, and then Braingrow, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen anything before or after that actor. I'm sure he looks much different with his hair cut off and because he's really playing again, he's just a
Well,
scary
also,
dude. I mean, a scary, scary dude. You wouldn't want to run into him at the fall festival or something. Oh yeah, yeah. Noonan is in Heat, but now by now we kind of know who he is. He did he's a director. He's actually directed some interesting little films. Uh, and and then John. Oh, we mentioned that John Voight is made up to look like Eddie Bunker. He's a nod physically.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
And so yeah, there's I mean yeah, this is just if you're into the Malcolm Mann universe, Heat 2 is a must read, obviously.
Well, the thing I think observations I had towards the end was that Heat is also, I mentioned Los Angeles play itself. Heat is just such a one of the most fundamental Los Angeles, to go with the nomenclature of that documentary, one of the great Los Angeles movies. And I was thinking of one great example of a sequel made to a really definitive Los Angeles movie that expands the universe, farther reaches, is Blade Runner. And Heat 2 kind of does this, where you see Chicago in the Heat universe, you see Mexico in the Heat universe. And I alluded to this when we were talking about the book deals, but one of my favorite things about the book, spoiler for the very last paragraph, is the last paragraph sets up Heat 3.
True, and yeah, and going back to some silly thoughts before we wrap it up here. I was thinking he likes cafe sequences, like the De Niro and Pacino, the famous cafe scene there.
Or you mentioned earlier, the James Caan Tuesday Weld scene.
The little cafe over the highway, and then and so remember they get Trejo. He's supposed to be the driver. He's out of commission to the plot machinations. So he has to get a driver at the last minute, and he sees one of his ex teammates in the ex-con's Dennis Haybert in the cafe, and he quits. Bud Cort is just uncredited Bud Cort. And I was thinking,
do you know how many times I've watched Heat and I've watched the commentary a few times, and I think this last watching of the commentary when I was like, oh my god, how many times have I seen that? I realized that was Bud Cort.
Yeah, and he's uncredited. Yeah, they should. And so I always thought it was funny because Gabby's working in a cafe where Otis and the first confrontation between Otis and
that definitely comes out.
And I thought, I wonder if it's the same cafe that Bud Cort's running.
I thought that is Gabby's wages being taken from underneath the table for some bullshit reason.
So yeah, but no, it's a different cafe. So
yeah,
I did look that back up.
Well, I mean, let's hope Heat 2 gets made into a movie. But if it doesn't get made into a movie, Michael Mann even said this, like when he was talking about a Ferrari doesn't do well enough and he doesn't get the option to doing Heat 2. He's like, I still have a bestseller.
Yeah,
and it is a really good. And Meg Gardiner and Michael Mann wrote a great book.
Do you think you are a much bigger reader than I am? Can you objectively pull yourself away and look at it as a book and not try to tie it into the movie that it holds up as a book on its own?
I don't think it needs to. I think this goes back to the Don Winslow as my reference point, because Don Winslow, I was talking with a friend about him the other day who loves Don Winslow as much as I do. We were talking about but Don Winslow doesn't write really distinctive characters. Michael Mann, for the most part, does. I don't want to say a lot of his characters talk the same, but I think he does distinctive characters. He's great at in using cinema terms, storytelling to differentiate everyone there too. But I mean, the goal is propulsiveness. I think when I was really trying to get you to read the book, I kept calling it an airport book, and it's way grander than that. So, but it's still, I think a book that is this entertaining sometimes gets a little backhand compliment, but it's a freaking entertaining book.
No, I guess as Jack Hanna would say, he's good. He's good.
You keep calling Jack Hanna?
No, I think of the animal guy. What is Hannah's?
Jack Hanna was the guy the Tonight Show.
Yeah, what is Hannah's first name?
Oh my god, I can't believe we got through this whole conversation.
I can't think of Hannah's first name.
That's good podcasting there, where we just managed to talk this whole way around bullshitting that we can't remember Vincent Hanna's name. Vincent. Yeah.
Yeah, there's we're just going to be backtracking, but there's a sequence where John Voight gives intel to Macaulay about Hannah, and I was trying to see if there was any mistakes made there that didn't jive with what happens in the book. He says he's a hot dog. He likes to do this kind of stuff. If there was any disparity between, because a lot of times when you go back and write background and history and go backwards, you didn't think about it when you initially wrote it, and so you might have some continuity errors.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's okay.
Retcon.
Retcon.
Yeah.
I thought there might be a retcon problem there, but I think it's okay.
Okay.
But yeah,
It got Ted to read prose.
Yeah, what's my next prose book I'm gonna read? I don't know.
Heat 3, apparently.
If it comes out.
When it comes out. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You got any Heat sign-off you want to do?
That was kind of my sign-off there. I was like, he's good. He's good. You know.
Jackie and a sign-off.
Yeah.
This book's got a great ass! Thanks, everybody, for listening.